Hello, everyone, and welcome to our workshop on creating a debt paydown plan. My name is Jim. I'll be your teacher today. I want to thank you for joining me. And before we get started, I like to be sure that everyone can hear me okay. And if you would, please type on over. Just let me know where you're listening from. I'm joining you from northern Idaho in the northwest part of the United States today. I always love to see where folks are checking in from, and I want to welcome back those of you who've been to some of our other workshops. Great to see familiar names here. I want to welcome Ann back from Southern California. It looks like Leslie's back from Calgary up there in Canada as well. We've got Salvador all the way from El Salvador. Great to have you on board. Ruben's here from Florida. Fantastic. Lots of folks are joining us today. So I won't go through the whole list, but I do appreciate you spending some time with me today. I know how challenging debt can be. Been there. And if you are here today, it's most likely because you can feel your debt just holding you back. Now, that money that you pay towards debt is going towards things that have already happened. So every dollar that's tied up in debt is money that you can't put toward your other priorities. When you have debt, you actually have a cash flow problem. So today we're going to dial in the process for paying down your debt. Now, to start with, there are some things that you really must budget for first. You still need to budget for your immediate obligations. You've got to pay the rent. You got to keep the lights on, all that good stuff. Now, we also need to budget for the minimum payments on our debts. Those are very much a part of our immediate obligations, aren't they? The amounts we have to pay each month. Let's go ahead and jump over to my budget so I can show you what I mean. You'll see here that I've started out by budgeting for my immediate obligations, all those things that I have to pay each month. Now, I've also budgeted for the minimum payments on each of my 3 credit cards. That's the amount I have to pay each month as well. So that's part of my immediate obligations too. But what about my other loans? My student loans, auto loans, personal loans. For most folks, the minimums on those are the monthly payments. So that's what I've budgeted for as well. So in addition to my immediate obligations, I've got 5 different debts that I'm making minimum payments on that are part of that. Now, these immediate obligations really are non-negotiable. Now, this might surprise you. After your immediate obligations, the next step is not to throw all the rest of your money at the debt, as much as you might want to. No, instead, you need to budget for your true expenses next. That's right. I'm talking about things like car repairs and holidays, all that stuff. These are all things that may not happen monthly, but they will happen. And here's why we want you to save up for these expenses. If you don't budget for those categories, well, you'll need to keep reaching for credit to cover them. So budgeting for these things keeps you from moving backwards. It's going to keep you moving ahead because now your cash flow situation will improve. Now let's go back to my budget because you'll see here after I budgeted for my immediate obligations, my next step was to start saving for these true expenses. These things that are going to happen down the road, I want to be ready for them when they do. And this will reduce my dependence on debt. And I have to tell you, the first time you have money for a car repair, it's a game changer. The first time you get through the holidays without actually having to charge things, you're going to feel great. Now, once those immediate obligations and true expenses are taken care of, then you can create a debt paydown plan. Now, we're going to focus on the debt with the smallest balance first. Why? Well, we want to gain momentum. We want to eliminate one of those debts entirely. Now, that smallest balance is the easiest one to get rid of. And once that debt is gone, then all the money you've been sending towards it can be reprioritized. All right, now I'd love to have you check out your own situations. See if you can identify your focus debt. Which one do you have that has the smallest balance? Feel free to type that on over if you'd like. I know for a lot of folks, credit cards seem to be the top of the list. I see that is true today as well. Student loan, okay. Yeah, but we want to target that lowest balance debt. Now, if you've got several different cards, just pick the one with the lowest balance. I see some folks with a line of credit, okay. If you've got a couple that are nearly the same, just pick one of the ones, whichever is the lowest. We're just separating that one, that lowest balance debt, so we've got something to focus on because we're going to eliminate that to free up that cash flow. Because once we've determined which is going to be our focus debt, then we can choose a payoff date. Now, a debt paydown goal will really help you with this because it's going to keep you focused, and it's also going to ensure that you're not making the cash flow situation worse. let's go back to my budget and identify my focus debt, okay? Now, I know it's not going to be my auto loan or student loan because those have really substantial balances. And of my credit cards, it looks like that MasterCard is, in fact, the lowest balance. So that's going to be my focus debt. Now, I have already budgeted for the minimum payment on that MasterCard. I still have $325 left to be budgeted after I've covered my immediate obligations, my true expenses. Now, how much of that should I put towards the debt? Now, there were some other things I wanted to budget for. I wanted to put some towards vacation. There was a power tool at Home Depot I wanted to get. But I'm thinking that debt really is a higher priority. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and create a goal to pay that off by a certain date. Maybe September. Could we get it paid off by then? YNAB will let me know exactly how much more I need to budget to make that happen. So in addition to that minimum, another $53.58, I'll have that card balance gone by September. Well, that doesn't seem like that big a lift. I think I could actually be a little more aggressive than that. Well, let's go ahead and move that date a little bit closer then, shall we? Let's see if we could possibly pay it off as soon as May. Well, now I can see that $191.67 will do it. Man, that sounds pretty good. I can do that. It'll still leave me some left over for my other priorities. I'm going to go that way. I'm going to use that quick budget tool to budget up to that goal target. So now I have the $241 going towards that MasterCard. It'll be paid off in just 3 months. And now I have a basic debt plan in place. So if I did nothing else but simply execute this plan, I know the debt on that MasterCard will be gone in just 3 months. But once that debt plan is in place, well, this is a good time to go ahead and evaluate your cash flow, because maybe you can get even more aggressive. Let's take a look at my budget. Now, I still have that $133.33 left to be budgeted. As much as I'd love to get that power tool, I'm thinking this debt is almost a higher priority for me. And maybe I can be more aggressive with the MasterCard. Now, right now it'll be paid off in 3 months. Could I possibly do it in 2? Could I even consider paying it off maybe next month? Let's adjust our target date by 1 more month, see if we can do it in 2. And I can see then that $120.83 will make that happen. I've got that. I can do this. I'm running with it. So let's go ahead and budget to that goal target. You know that other $12.50 that's left? Instead of spending that on a couple of lattes, I'd rather put it towards the debt because I'm ready to get aggressive and get this gone. So let's move that towards the MasterCard as well. And by doing that, I won't have to budget as much next month to pay off that card. Now, each of us is going to be at a different point along this journey. I know some of you will probably be focused just on immediate obligations. Some will focus on true expenses, maybe only make minimum payments on your debt. I'm sure some of you can do more and maybe even get really aggressive, but I'd love to know where you feel you're at in this process. Are you going to focus on immediate obligations, true expenses, or are you ready to get really aggressive? Why don't you type on over? I'd love to know where you feel you're at. I think it's so helpful to know where you're at in this process because it can be very difficult to know what steps to take next otherwise, right? I can remember being kind of discouraged and really not knowing what to do next. But when you see the path laid out, it gives you some clarity as to what you need to choose next. And I see immediate obligations for several of you. And as you're working through this, especially if you've just gotten started budgeting, you may be a little frustrated you can't do a little bit more. But one of the things I want to encourage you with is as you budget, you're going to find that you become so much more aware of your spending, but also of your priorities. It's very likely that you are going to find some money in your budget that you didn't even know was available. I know that happens so often. There may be some needless spending you weren't aware of, and that's how you'll be able to free up dollars to even move this faster. But you definitely want to target those immediate obligations first. Those are the have-tos. Now, you're making the minimum payments on your debt while you're doing that, okay? So you're not going to go backwards. But as soon as you can, I'd love to have you start saving for those true expenses as well. And I see some of you targeting those too. That is an important consideration. For so many folks, the credit card balance is a product of not being ready for some of these things when they happen, right? Yeah, the car breaks down, maybe something happens with the furnace and you didn't have anything set aside. Your only alternative is to reach for credit, right? So in a lot of ways, these are future debt prevention. So I want to encourage you to target those and start saving for those before you start getting aggressive on the debt. Okay. Now, does that mean these have to be fully funded before you can put anything extra towards your debt? No, of course not. Now, you'll know when you're comfortable with being able to start putting some more towards that debt, right? But I do think that you want to consider these as monthly budget amounts that you set aside. And then when you start putting some money towards the debt, you know you're going to be able to move forward. You're not going to go backwards. And that is so important. I know Salvador was mentioning, you understand exactly what that's talking about. Your credit card debt increases every time a rainy day happens, right? Well, that's what those true expenses are all about. They really are. Okay. So I think that that's why we always want to target those before we get aggressive on the debt. Now, some of you are ready to get aggressive, and that's great. Now, as you work through this, being aggressive on the debt helps you stay focused and making that a priority. Now, I see a couple of you wondering why we targeted the lowest balance debt instead of, say, maybe the higher interest rate. Anybody else wondering that? I know that's the advice you often get, really. But what we have found is by eliminating that first debt, that lowest balance debt, it frees up the cash flow for one thing and gives you an early win. That creates momentum. That's a lot of what you need to work with. That psychological victory is so important, I think, to help you stay with the plan. And while no one wants to pay interest, of course, the real problem with this is cash flow. As long as you have that debt, the debt owns those dollars. You don't get to prioritize what they need to do when they enter your life. So the sooner we can free up those dollars, the better we're able we are to align them with our priorities, right? Now, with this MasterCard, when it's gone in 2 months, I can then choose to take that $375 and move it towards my American Express, accelerating its pay down. And that's when the ball really gets to rolling, okay? But by the same token, I might find once that pay is paid off, that check engine light on the car just went on, and that ends up being a priority. But the important thing is that now I am in control, and I get to choose instead of having those dollars always going towards my past self's decisions. Does that make sense? So I know for those of you that are frustrated with having to pay interest, I know nobody wants to pay interest, but I think you will find targeting that lowest balance debt will give you the momentum you need and that psychological victory to help you really succeed at this. I see Leslie was kind of wondering about that. Does that make sense for you, Leslie? I hope it helps because it really does. We found this works so often. Okay. Now, if you've got some questions, this is a great time to send any questions you might have on over. We've got a little bit of time left. I want to use the rest of our time to address your questions. And if you'd like to chat with me live on the mic, just add yes to Mike to that question so I know you're able to talk with me. Always happy to read your questions right from the chat window, though, as well. But I'd like to see how we're doing it. I want to make sure that this applies to your situation so you can create a debt plan that really is going to work for you as well. So now something I want to point out, if you decide you want to get aggressive, you have another very valuable tool at your disposal to help you stay on track with that. And that is the mobile apps. I mentioned the awareness about your spending, and this is one of the real powerful aspects of the budget, right? But let's walk through a hypothetical situation, okay? Let's say I'm out shopping for some clothes, okay? And I check my budget on my phone, and I see that, well, I've got $125 available for clothes. Maybe I've got about $100 worth of clothes sitting in the cart, right? So I'm good to go. I can buy these clothes, no worries. But then I remember, that debt really is a priority for me. Do I really need these clothes? Well, truth is, I could probably go a little while without buying new clothes and target that debt instead. So instead, I might choose to go ahead and put those clothes back and take the money I was going to spend on the clothes and move that towards my debt payment. And it's easy to do. Just swipe right on the category. We can take that $100 we are about to spend and move it from our clothing category, okay, and put it towards our MasterCard payment. And this is something you can do when you're out and about, when you're making these choices. And look at that. I have now realigned those dollars with that priority of getting the debt gone. I think it's really helpful to evaluate your spending decisions in the context of all your priorities. And you'll see very quickly how important paying that debt down really is when you start doing that. But this is how the budget empowers you to make progress towards that goal of getting the debt gone. And remember, everything you do on the mobile syncs right back to the web app, so you'll be up to speed no matter what device you use to access your budget. But how many of you are using the mobile apps? Just out of curiosity, why don't you type on over if you're using the mobile apps? I find it such a helpful tool to have my budget with me, have that plan that I've made, and be able to make some of those decisions when I'm out and about. I see Ann is, several of you are, yeah. Yeah, and if you don't have them yet, you can pick them up on the iTunes and the Android store, and they'll sync right up with your budget. And it really is a game changer when you've got that financial plan with you, and you just make that simple habit of checking your budget and making sure that the spending you're doing is aligned with your priorities. So, Salvador was mentioning you were throwing all your cash into your debt. Salvador, can you see how that process is a little bit different maybe than what you've done before? I can remember doing the same thing. I got mad at the debt and I took everything I had, threw at it. But that's setting you up for only going backwards, because if you're not ready for some of these other things, you have to reach for credit again. And few things are more demoralizing than taking a couple steps forward only to take a step backwards, right? I know this is one of the things that really made a difference for me. As you start to see your ongoing progress, I think you will find it is very encouraging, and you won't feel like you're in denial, deprived. You'll actually feel empowered because the budget's the tool that's helping you reach that goal. Yeah, Salvador says, yeah, it is. It's simple, but it's counterintuitive. It is different than what you might think. But that's why we want to really stress that process. I think if you work through this process, you're going to find that you know exactly what steps to take next. It's going to make those decisions so much easier. All right. Well, let's see how we're doing here. Let me know if you got some other questions here as well. Now, one of the things I want to encourage you with too, as you're working through this, if you're like me, you get mad at the debt, you want to make it happen really fast, right? Well, I do want to encourage you to create a plan that is sustainable. Really, this is a marathon. It is not a sprint. And for example, if you create a plan that maybe has you doing absolutely no eating out, for example, until the debt's gone, well, is that realistic? You might find that by just budgeting enough for maybe a meal out once a month, it's enough to keep you motivated, give you something to look forward to, right? And help you stick with the plan. Because let's face it, sometimes you need to eat out. Sometimes maybe it's for special occasions, for work. But we want to make sure that this is a plan that isn't going to leave you completely miserable, because if you're miserable, let's face it, you are more likely to give up, right? We don't want that to happen. So be sure to make sure that this plan is something that is sustainable for you. And I think that that's going to help you stick it through in the long run, okay? And remember, as you free up those dollars, once that MasterCard's gone, it's totally out of my life. Not only will it be an encouragement and psychological win, seeing a zero next to that MasterCard, but it'll have freed up those dollars that I can then move towards my next debt. Now, Leslie made the comment, we all still have to live. Absolutely. Yeah. And it'll take a little bit longer potentially to maybe get that debt gone. But I think if you do it with a sustainable plan, you're going to have it gone. And those habits that help you get the debt gone, they're going to help you keep the debt gone as well. Because let's face it, by budgeting for those true expenses, really being aware of your priorities and aligning your dollars with your priorities, that empowers you to make sure that those dollars do exactly what you need to do. You won't need the debt any longer. Now, I see we're nearing the end of our time together. I'm hoping that this has been helpful for you. I hope you leave today, too, with some hope and encouragement, because you can do this. We're here to help any way we can, and I think the budget is the most valuable tool you've got to help you achieve that objective. And as you work through this process, if you've got questions, you need some help, just drop us a line at help@youneedabudget.com. Our support folks can answer any specific questions you might have about your budget. Do check out some of our other workshops as well. We've got a lot of different classes. You'll see them all listed on that classes page. I've just sent you over the link. And we do have another workshop coming up tomorrow morning, all right, with my buddy Dave. He's going to be doing our Learn the 4 Rules workshop. He is great. I think you really enjoy spending some time with him. And wonderful teacher. I've sent you the registration link if you'd like to join him for that. It's at 10:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow. But for now, I'm out of time and need to wrap things up. But thank you all so much for joining me today. I sure look forward to seeing you again in another workshop very soon. Bye, folks.